The San Francisco 49ers are standing at a fascinating crossroads right now. And if you really zoom out, what we're seeing isn't just a team making off-season moves. This is a franchise recalibrating its entire identity while trying to keep a championship window wide open. The headlines might look disconnected at first glance, but when you stitch them together, a very clear strategy starts to emerge. It all begins with one of the most underrated but critical storylines surrounding this team. And that's the financial chess game being played with Brandon Aiyuk. On the surface, it feels strange. Here's a player who was once considered a foundational piece of the offense, now lingering in roster limbo with no immediate resolution. But this isn't about emotion, and it's not about punishment. This is pure business strategy. The 49ers are operating with patience because the numbers demand it. Moving Aiyuk too early doesn't give them flexibility, and releasing him outright gives them almost nothing in return. By waiting, they preserve optionality. They create a window where another team, maybe one that suffers an injury or suddenly finds itself in contention, becomes desperate enough to absorb that contract. That's where the leverage shifts. And the contract itself is the real story. Aiyuk's deal is structured in a way that almost traps both sides. Any team trading for him inherits escalating salary figures that don't match his current market value, especially coming off injury. That creates hesitation across the league. At the same time, if Aiyuk forces his way out via release, he's looking at a massive pay cut on a short-term prove-it deal. So both sides are effectively locked in a standoff, waiting for the market to bend. What makes this even more compelling is how it directly connects to the 49ers' aggressive move in free agency, bringing in Mike Evans. This wasn't just a signing, it was a statement. The 49ers identified a void in their offense and filled it with a prototype X-receiver who has defined consistency for nearly a decade. Even at 32, Evans changes the geometry of the field. He gives Brock Purdy a vertical threat, a red zone weapon, and something this offense has lacked, a physically dominant outside presence who can win contested catches at will. And for a quarterback like Purdy, who thrives on timing and structure, having that kind of safety valve is invaluable. But the ripple effects go deeper. This move isn't just about replacing Aiyuk's production. It's about reshaping the receiver room. It allows younger players like Ricky Pearsall to develop without the pressure of being the guy. It potentially shifts the entire offensive philosophy under Kyle Shanahan, who now has more flexibility in how he designs passing concepts. And here's where things get even more interesting. While the offense is undergoing this transformation, the front office is quietly signaling that the trenches, especially the defensive front, remain a top priority. Multiple mock drafts and evaluations point toward edge rushers and defensive linemen as prime targets early in the draft. That's not surprising when you consider the identity this team has built over the years. The 49ers have always leaned on a dominant defensive line to control games, and there's a clear effort to reload that unit with younger, explosive talent. Prospects like Akeem Masitter or Joshua Josephs fit that mold perfectly: long, athletic pass rushers who can thrive in a rotational system. But there's also a subtle shift happening. There's increasing attention being paid to the offensive line, particularly the interior. Names like Yeager Burton and Jalen Farmer aren't flashy, but they represent something the 49ers desperately need: stability and physicality up front. Because as great as the skill players are, everything hinges on protection. And that brings us to one of the most critical contract situations on the roster, involving Trent Williams. The decision not to exercise his option bonus raised eyebrows, but it's not a sign of concern. It's a setup for negotiation. The 49ers are clearly looking to restructure or extend Williams in a way that lowers his immediate cap hit, while keeping him anchored as the cornerstone of the offensive line. This is a delicate balance. Williams is still one of the best tackles in football, but he's also entering the later stages of his career. The team has to weigh short-term competitiveness against long-term sustainability. And how they handle this situation will directly impact their ability to build around Purdy moving forward. Right now, the 49ers are threading a very fine needle. They're trying to stay elite while getting younger, trying to manage the cap while adding talent, and trying to maintain continuity while making necessary changes. And if you're enjoying this kind of deep breakdown of how elite NFL teams operate behind the scenes, this is the moment to hit subscribe and stay locked in. because we're just getting started with what could be one of the most fascinating offseason transformations in the league. Now, let's zoom out even further and look at the draft philosophy of this regime under Shanahan and John Lynch. The hit rates tell a story that's both encouraging and cautionary. In the first round, it's been inconsistent. You have home runs like Nick Bosa, who became a Defensive Player of the Year and a cornerstone of the franchise. But you also have misses like Trey Lance, which represent massive opportunity costs. Where this team has truly separated itself is in the later rounds. The fifth round, in particular, has been a goldmine. Finding players like George Kittle and Talanoa Hufanga at that stage isn't just good scouting. It's elite organizational vision. And of course, there's the ultimate outlier in Brock Purdy, a seventh-round pick who has completely redefined what's possible at the quarterback position in today's NFL. His emergence is the reason this team can even afford to make aggressive moves elsewhere. A franchise quarterback on a team-friendly deal is the ultimate cheat code. But even with that advantage, there are cracks that need addressing. The third round, for example, has been filled with misses, highlighting the importance of maximizing every opportunity in a draft class that could define the next phase of this team. And speaking of defining moments, there's another wild card that could impact the 49ers' season in ways no one can fully predict: officiating. The possibility of replacement referees returning to the NFL is more than just a headline. It's a potential competitive variable. For a team like the 49ers, who have been on the wrong side of controversial calls in the past, this introduces a layer of unpredictability that could swing critical games. From historic playoff moments to recent questionable decisions, officiating has always played a role in shaping outcomes. And if the league does move forward with less experienced officials, the margin for error shrinks even further. All of these elements, the roster moves, the contract negotiations, the draft strategy, and even external factors like officiating, are converging at a single point in time. This is a pivotal offseason for the San Francisco 49ers. They're not rebuilding. They're not even retooling in the traditional sense. They're evolving. And the success of that evolution will depend on how well they navigate these interconnected decisions. Can Evans stay healthy and elevate the offense? Can they extract value from the Aiyuk situation? Can they hit on their draft picks and reinforce the trenches? Can they manage the cap without sacrificing depth? These aren't just offseason questions. These are the factors that will determine whether this team remains a contender or takes a step back in an increasingly competitive NFC. So as the offseason unfolds, every move, every rumor, every contract tweak matters. Because for a team this close to a championship, the difference between success and failure is often found in the smallest details. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist, every roster move, and every strategic decision shaping the future of this team, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because this 49ers story is far from over, and the next chapter could define an entire era of football in San Francisco.